Hi and welcome to Excel Plus for the second part in our tutorial for creating a dynamic dashboard with sort of many different features, slices, graphs, etc. At the end of the last tutorial I'd set up the basic formatting, which I've tidied up since the end of that, and I'm going to try and keep the tutorials to no more than 10 minutes because I think this will take several tutorials to go through from start to finish. And the next thing we'll look at are the radio buttons and maybe the first pivot table if there's time. So looking back at the main dashboard, it's these radio buttons which ultimately will decide the comparative and even drive the redrawing of this graph. So let's start with that first. Now the radio buttons, you need to have the developer tab. I'm sure you know how to do that by now. If it's not visible, file, options, customize ribbon, tick developer. Alright, now on the developer tab there is an insert, and on the form controls are the radio buttons. So select one, place it there. Now we're going to use this to make the other radio buttons, so let's format it, line it up. Let's just put any old text in there for now. Now if we right click on that button, format control, and it's going to be linked to a cell, so when the radio button changes it alters the number in a cell. And on the parameters tab, that is the cell it is going to alter. So we'll set up a parameter in the background that the radio buttons can change. And an important thing with everything we've put on here, properties do not move or resize with cells. Now I don't think I mentioned that with these shapes. Similarly, properties do not move. Anything you put on here, format shape, properties do not move. So if you do need to alter columns to fit things in, it's not going to alter your formatting. Right, highlight that radio button and generate two more copies. So Control and C, Control and V twice. That generates us the other radio buttons. So let's it's a little bit fiddly to move around. You've got to right click to select them, and let's try and get them in the right place. Hit Control and select 1, 2, 3, drawing tools, align left. Oh dear me, I'd also had that shape done. Try again, align left. And there are the radio buttons 1, 2 and 3. Click the first one, look at parameters, it's 1. Second one, parameters 2. Third one, parameters 3. And I think this was prior year budget and forecast. Yes, prior year budget forecast. So right click, edit text. Prior year, edit text, budget, and last one, edit text, forecast. So that's great. If we look at our parameters tab, oh look, I've left I've left a formula in there. Let's get rid of it. Haven't done that as yet. Look on our parameters tab, that alters, and the heading, which will be driving our comparatives, is a VLOOKUP for the 3 options based on this changing 1, 2, 3. Again, this is just because this is a financial one, but basically the options could be whatever you choose yourself. Whatever goes in there will be looked up. So to set up the region view data, we now need to generate our first pivot table. So if we go to the data, actually no, let's go to the region revenue. And now I've left a macro attached to this sheet, which will generate an error first time we alter it. Enter number 1, you'll get a runtime error. So if you click debug, what it's basically trying to do is to redraw the chart, because when that page alters, the value for the waterfall chart, which we will do, changes. So if we hit stop there, go up and double click on the region revenue tab, the macro which is causing this to run is there, and just put a single quotation mark in front of that one line of code, and that will essentially turn it off. It'll turn it into a comment or a remark, and we can now alter this sheet without worrying about that macro, but it'll be nicely there for us to turn on once we get to that part of the dashboard, and it'll just save you that bit of time. Right, now inserting the pivot table. Go to the data sheet, you can insert pivot. There is actually a shortcut for pivot tables, Alt DP, unusual combination. Next, but that's hardly much of a time saving, to be honest. Once you're in a formatted Excel table like this, any cell, insert pivot table, brings it straight up and it selects that table. Nice and easy. Let's put it in an existing worksheet, and we'll go to region revenue, put it in the top corner. There's our pivot table. We now need just to bring in the relevant fields. It's by region, so that's our row label. The filter is going to be by month, which we'll make a slicer of. And then now if we notice, I use the order in the parameters actual, prior year, budget, forecast. So we'll stick to that order, so it'll just make it easy to copy and paste formulas. Actual, prior year, budget, forecast. Actual, prior year, budget, forecast. Same for the year-to-date. Year-to-date actual, prior year, budget, forecast. Let's just get rid of that for now, and let's just format this nicely. Control and 1 to format cells. Nothing too fancy. We'll just have it with comma separators in and zeros. And looking at the top of those headings, if we right click value field settings, we can change that to actual. Right, I'll reformat them, and the pivot table itself, we can give that a name so we know where it is. So if we right click there, pivot table options, and let's call this region revenue, just like the tab. So again, it'll make it very easy for us to recognize that pivot table. Right, I'm closing in on nearly 9 minutes now, so I think I'll end the tutorial there. I'll pick it up in the next tutorial. We'll add the slicer, and we'll start generating the data for the region revenue tables. So keep checking the channel. I'll upload that next tutorial as soon as I've done it. And as always, any queries, questions, etc., just email me at exceladviceplus.com. It's in the notes to the tutorial, as is the download. I'll answer them if I can, and maybe include it in a future tutorial. Until then, enjoy everything Excel.